It's going to happen. Eventually, it will happen. At some point in a notary's commission, they will run into a situation where the signer wants their signature notarized, but he doesn't have government issue ID. So it's not a matter of if, I think it's a matter of when. And it's important when it does happen that you, as a notary public, knows what your state allows you to do as a backup plan or plan B. Do you have to reject the notarization altogether, or are there options? Not having identification does not mean the signer is acting fraudulently or is here in the US illegally. It doesn't mean they're trying to um, commit a crime. It could simply be they lost their identification temporarily. It could be they were admitted into a hospital by ambulance, and along the way, the wallet or the purse got left behind someplace. It's not for us to judge. It's for us notaries, again, to know, does the lack of government issue ID mean that you have to reject or refuse to notarize the signature? My name's Michelle Riley. I'm a commissioned notary here in the state of Alabama. I'm also a notary instructor, and in this video, I want to talk about credible witnesses as a possible plan B or option that allows notaries to move forward with the notarization if the signer lacks government issue ID. Normally, my videos are targeted to Alabama notaries only. And so when I started researching this topic for this video, I got curious to know, well, now that I know about what Alabama notaries can and can't do, I wonder about Georgia, I wonder about California. And so I did some digging. And so this will probably be one of very few videos that I think notaries in other states might glean some helpful information. And so if you are commissioned in another state other than Alabama, I want to encourage you to keep watching to the end, and hopefully you can pick up some helpful information. With that being said, whether you are in Alabama or any other state, I don't want you to treat the information I'm about to share with you as formal training and 100% correct information. Why? Notary laws change frequently enough for me to need to say that. The information that I gathered on this topic dates back about 3, almost 4 months ago. And things do change. And so I want to encourage everyone before acting upon the information I'll be sharing in just a moment, take the time to check your state notary laws to make sure that you have a full and complete understanding about how credible witness works in your state. Are you with me? In the short amount of time that we have, I want to give you a definition of what credible witness or witnesses means. And then I want to just do a high level overview or scenario about how the process could work in your state. Again, knowing that each state, it may be handled a little differently. Then I'm going to share a list of the states that, to my understanding, allow notaries to use this method to identify signers who lack any other type of identification. And then finally, something that I always try to do, I want to take a look at what some industry experts have to say about using credible witnesses. One other thing I want to add at the very end of this video, Alabama notaries, I need you to stick around because I have a special message to share with you about signer identification. All right, let's go ahead and get started. First of all, using a credible witness to identify a signer should never be the first option for notaries. The first option, the best option is if you personally know the signer, the individual signing. I believe every state does allow notaries to use personal knowledge. After that, it's government issue ID. Those are the two most common, most ideal methods to identify a signer. But as I mentioned before, things happen, life be lifing, especially nowadays. I know I've misplaced my driver's license for several weeks. Now, I had a backup ID, which, would have been useful, but not everyone has a passport or a different form of ID. I can't help but think about the families who have been displaced in the last few weeks in California, in the last several months throughout the Southeast, as natural disasters have impacted thousands of individuals who may have lost all forms of government issue ID. And so, in those instances, as well as others that we've talked about already, this method using um, one or more individuals to help notaries verify the signer's identity could really uh, be a helpful tool. Let's take a look at some other information about credible witnesses. I'm going to read what's on the screen. Unfortunately, I did not make a note where I got this from. So it's a combination of me putting it in my words and my research from multiple sources, the National Notary Association, um, Peter Van Alstyne, and Michael Closen. So, the definition of a credible witness: an individual who personally knows the signer and the signer's legal name. The individual agrees to appear before the notary along with the signer to vouch for the signer's identity. And in most states, the credible witness will be required to do so under penalty of perjury. And this method is used in lieu of requiring the signer to produce valid government issue ID. Now, states can vary as far as the number of credible witnesses needed and the exact process that the notary must follow. And so, what you'll find if your state allows you to use credible witnesses, your state will indicate whether you just need one person to be a witness, a credible witness, or two or three individuals. Okay. Some states may have some parameters set up about how long the credible witness needs to know the signer. I believe in at least one state, the notary may need to know the credible witness. So again, you've got to pull out your notary handbook, your state statutes to see what steps you need to follow when using a credible witness. Generally speaking, all right, you're going to, in order to perform a notarization using credible witnesses, you're going to go into that signing with a thorough understanding of your state laws. You're going to meet with the signer. This is the person who needs their signature notarized, and the credible witness or credible witnesses. Everyone needs to be in the same room at the same time. You're going to carefully verify the identity and the relationship of each witness. And so these credible witnesses, they need to produce government issue ID. All right? The signer may not have ID, but these witnesses need to have ID. And it is okay in most states for you to ask some questions so that you have a better understanding of how the witnesses know the signer. What I'm getting at is what should not happen is the signer just walks up to a total stranger and says, "Hey, I need my signature notarized. I don't have ID. Do you have ID? Oh, you do? All right, well, come with me to meet with a notary. You tell them my name is Jane Doe. I get my signature notarized and I'll give you $50. That's not what this is about. So the expectation is that there is some type of relationship between the witnesses and the signer for this to work. And in some states, you will have to place the witnesses under oath, where they are going to affirm or swear under penalty of perjury that they truly do know the identity of the signer. You are going to want to make journal entries documenting this transaction. Now, as you know, normally the only person signing your journal would be the signer. And if it's a document that requires traditional witnesses that need to be have their signatures notarized, they would sign your journal as well. Well, for credible witnesses, you are verifying their identity. And so you're going to make an entry that this person acted as a credible witness for the signer. And yes, you're going to have the credible witness sign your journal as well, unless your state laws tell you something different. And you're going to have the signer also sign your journal. And in this case, instead of indicating that they showed you a driver's license, a passport, or you personally knew them, you're going to indicate that they use the credible witness method in order for you to verify their identity. Once you get past the whole ID verification, you're going to just go ahead and complete the notarization the way you normally would. If it's a jurat notarization, don't forget to put the signer under oath. And don't forget to watch them sign their name. You're going to still do your other verbal ceremonies and making sure the signer understands what they're about to sign and that no one is forcing them to sign. So again, while the identification process is unusual, unique, you don't do it every day. Once it's complete, don't forget to follow all of the other normal steps you take when notarizing the signer's signature. In some states, you may be required to use a special notarial certificate or special wording so that it is clear on the document that you use the credible witness method. So again, your handbook or your state statutes will let you know or will tell you if you need to fill out any special loose notary certificate or any other form that indicates you use this method of identifying the signer. All right, that completes the high level overview. I hope that gave you a visual idea of how using credible witnesses would work. Now let's take a look at the states that appeared to allow this method of identification. I know that you can read and read well, but some of you may be listening as a podcast, so I am going to read each of the states' names aloud. And those of you who are Alabama notaries, yes, you are seeing correctly. You have noticed that normally Alabama, when listed alphabetically, should be the first state name listed, and it is missing. That is because Alabama does not allow us, me, you, to use credible witnesses as a method to ID the signer. I know. And remember, I don't want you to feel like, okay, I just wasted 7-8 minutes of your time. I've got more information for you in just a moment. So these are the states, when I did a quick check of their notary laws, that allow their notaries to use credible witnesses: Arizona, California, Colorado, Delaware, Florida, Georgia, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Massachusetts, Mississippi, Missouri, Nebraska, Nevada, New Mexico, and North Carolina. North Dakota, Oregon, Pennsylvania, Texas, Virginia, and West Virginia. Remember, the method that West Virginia notaries use to perform A notarization using credible witnesses may look different from the method notaries in Oregon might use. I'm curious to hear from you, those of you from these states. Is this the first time you're hearing about credible witnesses? Yes or no? And then I'd like to know, those of you who have known about it, have you used it yet? Was it rocky? Did it go smoothly? Is it something that you're going to use in the future? And then finally, if at least one or two of you could share what the situation was that required you to use credible witness. I really would like to know how it works out for you. As always, when I'm doing these videos, I like to take a look at what the industry experts, the notary industry experts, have to say on a particular topic. Michael Closen, who has a Juris Doctorate degree, he has authored multiple books, and whenever there is a big case being heard in courtrooms that involve notarizations and notaries, he is frequently called upon to get his expert opinion. And he does have an opinion on this, a surprising opinion, in my opinion. Micah Closen writes in his book, Notary Best Practices, which you can find on the National Notary Association's website if you want to purchase it. Professor Closen writes, the use of a credible witness shifts the responsibility away from the notary to a lay witness with no legal responsibility for the notarization. I should have said this up front. Professor Closen is not a fan of notaries using credible witnesses to identify signers. He makes that clear in his book. He's not saying it's illegal and you can't do it. He wouldn't say that because state laws allow us to. But he is warning us, to be careful when using this method. This shifts the responsibility away from the notary, the responsibility of identifying the signer, from the notary to a lay person, the credible witness, with no legal responsibility for the notarization. The way I take that is the notary, we are still ultimately responsible for the notarization. And if for whatever reason that credible witness ain't that credible, it may not excuse us from liability. And so again, this is why I don't want you to think, oh, great, I can do this. People always tell me they don't have ID with them. They left it at home. Be very careful and cautious. All right, that's Professor Closen's opinion. Peter Van Alstyne, also Juris Doctorate degree, an author, an expert in the notary industry. He writes in his book, Notary Encyclopedia, credible witnesses must not be parties to the transaction on which the signer they identify is signing. All right, so that says to me, If the signer says Michelle, let's assume I'm in another state, I want to make Sam my power of attorney, but I don't have ID. Sam is here. He'll vouch for my ID, and the power of attorney document, once signed and executed, gives Sam the power or the authority. Peter Van Alstyne is saying, nah, you shouldn't. The credible witness should not be part of the transaction. The only role the credible witness should be is, yes, I can confidently state or swear or affirm that that person's name is Idris Elba. Okay? And then finally, the National Notary Association, in one of its notary bulletins, states credible witnesses should have a reputation for honesty and be competent. Definitely agree with that. And that may not be that easy for a notary to be aware of in such a short amount of time, of a signing. So that's why I mentioned earlier, when going through the process, that you have a conversation with the credible witness. You're going to need to make sure your spidey senses are activated, that you're alert, that you're, watching body language and all, and make sure that there are no red flags, visible red flags that would cause you to halt the notarization altogether, because though that credible witness seems not so credible. In closing, those of you who want to learn more about credible witnesses, if it's still allowed in your state, and how to perform it, you're going to first check your notary handbook. Then you're going to review your state statutes. And for many of you, that could mean going on your Secretary of State's website, actually checking your state laws. If your state has a notary division as part of the governor's office, you should know this already, but that's where you go to learn more. And then you can also utilize the National Notary Association, which has a wealth of information on its website. Less than half of the states allow credible witnesses to be used. We went through the states, so about 20 some states do allow it, the rest do not. So Alabama notaries, we're not alone in this, okay? Using a credible witness should be limited to unusual situations when a signer is unable to produce government issue identification. Notaries must follow their own state-specific notary laws, and don't get creative here. This is already a type of an exception. For you to then say, well, the state said I need to use 2 or 3 witnesses, credible witnesses, but the signer could only find one. I'll accept that one. Do not do that. Do not compromise. The notary journal must reflect that the notary used credible witness or witnesses instead of government issue ID, and if required, that the notary also place those witnesses under oath. I want to thank you for hanging in here till the end. I hope you found this information helpful. Alabama notaries, before you click off, I have something to share with you. Everyone else, if you want to drop off now, I am totally okay with that. And before you do, if you wouldn't mind, if you haven't already, take a moment to subscribe to the channel. Yes, most of my content is geared towards Alabama notaries, but just like this topic, occasionally a video will provide information for notaries in other states. If there is a topic you'd like for me to research for you, please make a note of it in the comments below. And thanks again for tuning in. Don't leave Alabama. Right. If you're a commissioned Alabama notary, I'm going to just take really less than 5 minutes. Now, there's a lot of information, more information to cover, but I'm going to have to do a separate video for that. We just finished talking about credible witnesses, which is a secondary method to verify a signer's identity if they don't have the usual ID, driver's license, state ID, passport, the usual. I owe some of you an apology. I've been asked more than once, Michelle, can we use, what if the signer doesn't have those types of identification? Can we use a birth certificate? Can we use something else? And I consistently said no. Well, I found something on the National Notary Association's website, which complements information that I received years ago, albeit years ago, from the Alabama Secretary of State's office. But because I received that information verbally, they may have faxed me something. I was never comfortable using that information in my training or mentoring. But when I recently found the same information on the NNA's website, I knew I needed to come clean and share it with you. And so I'm going to quickly show you where this information is. Something tells me a few of you already know about this. And then I will do a follow-up Zoom, either YouTube video or Zoom meeting in our Facebook group or something, because I know there are going to be questions. And so what I'm about to show you are other types of documents that we here in Alabama can use when the signer lacks the traditional forms of ID. All right, you're going to go to the National Notary Association's website, which is nationalnotary.org. I'm a member, but if you can see, I am not signed in. And so that leads me to believe you don't have to be a member of the NNA in order to view this information. I hope I'm right. So you're going to go to their website, and then you're going to look for the Knowledge Center. So right now I'm on the Knowledge Center. And then you are going to go to Laws and Resources. And then you're going to come down and click on U.S. Notary Reference, and then click on Alabama. All right. Every now and then, screen share is slow. So I'm checking to make sure what I'm seeing on my screen is what you're seeing. All right. Something tells me this is tiny. Let's see. Can I zoom? No. So just write down the URL so that you can check this out later. But I'm going to read it to you. Under identification, I want to get to the meat. If the person whose signature the notary is to attest is not known to the notary, personal knowledge, he should require whatever form of identification is adequate for him to reasonably ascertain the identification of that person. Photo identification is certainly preferable, but if it's not available, other sources of identification may be used. Acceptable sources of identification may include the birth certificates, social security cards, food stamp cards, marriage certificates, Medicaid, Medicare, or welfare identification, or any form of governmentally issued identification. This came out in an attorney general opinion going back a ways to 1998. A lot has changed since then, but this is what a attorney at the Secretary of State's office shared with me when I was in the middle of a very difficult notarization with a 90-something-year-old woman who was with her case manager from the Social Security Administration, who showed me her credentials. And we were trying our best to make it possible for this woman to get a state ID. And so the representative from the Secretary of State's office provided this information to me as an alternative. And it allowed me to perform the notarization. So I wanted to mention this. Again, this is not the right time for me to answer questions because I'm talking to myself and the camera right now, which is why I think we need to take this offline. But I wanted to give you time to review this, make notes, come up with your own questions, and then make sure you attend. Maybe I'll do a live, I don't know, whatever works best for us, so we can take a deeper dive in this. Um, so, no credible witnesses for Alabama, but here we do have possibly some other alternatives because, again, as I mentioned earlier, just because the signer can't produce the typical types of identification that we like to have, doesn't mean the person doesn't deserve to have their signature notarized. I want to thank you for sticking around. Um, I'm tempted to shout out some names of some notaries from the group that I'm sure hung in there. But be sure to share this information with other Alabama notaries, your buddies that you know would like to have this information. Again, I appreciate you being a follower, a subscriber, and a friend. Have a great rest of your day.